So today I'm going to replace this French cleat wall. This is the very first set of French cleats I ever put up. Still learning about it at the time, and let me explain kind of why I want to replace this. So first of all, the backing here is pegboard. And this is what I used to use before with pegs, and they kept breaking out, so that's why I use the French cleats. But when I attach the cleats to the wall, obviously the pegboard, I can't screw them into that because it's not solid enough, so I screwed them into the studs, which means I only have attachments every 16 inches, and having more attachments is going to make it more secure. So that's number one. Number two, when I put all these cleats on, they're actually far too high. I don't need them that high. You can notice that most of the hangers, I couldn't even move up there because they run into where the garage door is going to go. So I need to move everything down. And then the other thing is that the spacing is too far apart. I don't need them this far apart. I had made them that way because I thought, well, I really needed room. But you'll notice that these hangers, they don't actually go to hit the next cleat for support. So I'm going to start by taking everything off of the wall. I'm going to remove the cleats, remove the pegboard, and what I'm going to replace it with is 1/2-inch plywood that will give me a solid surface to screw the cleats to. So the plywood will be attached to the studs, and then the cleats will be attached to the plywood, which is a much more secure way to do it. And that's what I've done on my wall over there. And then I'm going to move everything down. Now this is a 48-inch piece of pegboard. I don't need something that deep. I only need these 3 cleats. So I'm going to use a piece of 24-inch wide 1/2-inch plywood that I happen to have left over from another project. And so I'm going to put that on and be able to put these cleats on. So I'm going to start by taking everything off of the wall and then removing the cleats and the pegboard. Okay, now that everything is off, and by the way, the holders, I have some videos on how you can build some of those holders, especially the rake holders, the long tool holders. So what I want to do is to measure, and see here, you can see this cleat here, because it's not screwed in, it's sticking out a bit, and that's not as secure. So I'm going to measure if this is the top cleat that I need. I don't need anything higher than that. Measure where that is from the floor. So that's about 76 from the floor. So I need to put the plywood a little higher than that. So then the 24 inches will come down here, which is a little better of a height to work with. So if I have my plywood starting at about 78 from the floor, that should be good. So now I'll go ahead and remove all these screws to get the cleats off the wall. Okay, all the cleats are off. Now I can take the pegboard off. Okay, so now I'm going to measure 78 inches from the floor, which is the top of the plywood. Which is right there. Okay, so now we can put our piece of plywood, 1/2-inch plywood, in place and screw it in place. There we go. Level, so now I can just put the rest of the screws in. Okay, so now our plywood is really solid on those studs. Now I can mark out where I'm going to put my cleats on the wall. Now to figure out where you want to position them, either work from the bottom up or the top down. Now because my restriction more is on the top with the garage door, I'm going to work from the top down. And so if this is, let's say, the holder, and that's where the top is going to be. So if I just turn it down, move it up a bit, I know that's where my top cleat on the wall needs to be. So I've marked here on my plywood. And now I just want to again move that level mark across. So now the question is, how far down do you put the next cleat? So I always measure bottom to bottom because that's the easiest way to have a straighter edge. And it depends on how tall your cleat is. So these are some of the earliest cleats that I ever cut, and they're taller than my current ones. Currently what I use is 6.5-inch spacing bottom to bottom. These cleats are a little taller, so I think I'm going to go with 7-inch spacing. So if you want to sort of get a sense of what that's like, if this is, where the bottom is going to be, so we know that line. So if the next hanger has to go in, and then you, again, roll it down, and right there, that's about my 7-inch mark. So that's going to fit really well. So now, again, what I'm going to do is just, again, double check. I've got 7 inches from my mark here. There we go. And now I can just move it with my level across the board to get a straight line that I'm going to be able to use to line up my cleat. Before we start putting the cleats up on the wall, what we want to do is we want to pre-drill holes in the cleats so that we can just put the screws in and we don't have any splitting or anything like that. So what I like to do is I like to draw 2 parallel lines down the length of the cleat and then mark the spots where I'm going to drill the holes. Now, it depends on how, again, tall your cleat is. These taller cleats, I'm going to draw it at 1 inch and 2 inches above the bottom. With my newer cleats that aren't as tall, I go 3/4 and 1.5. So it really kind of depends on how tall your cleats are. But make sure the top line, the top screw, is not going to impede the angle. So you want to make sure it's below the angle. I've marked my 1 and 2 inch. Now I'm just going to take a straight edge, line it up, draw my line all the way down. Okay, now I need to mark exactly where I'm going to drill the holes. So this particular board is 28 inches long. So what I like to do is I like to put the first screw in 1 inch from each end. So I'll mark 1 inch from each end here. And then I usually, depending on how long the board is, I want another 3 or 4 to go in. So I have a total of 28. So usually I try to do about every 4 to 5 inches or so. So if I go at 6, 11, 16 and 22, that's probably going to work well. So 6, 11, so 5 inches, another 5 inches to 16, another to 21, 21 or 22, that should be fine. Now, if you have a situation where you need to cut the cleat to fit on the wall, then obviously cut that first before you do the measurements. So now I know what my measurements are. I can go ahead and mark the other line at the same spot. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. I don't need to measure for these ones, but mark those where we want them to be. And then go ahead and use those same markings for all the other boards, the cleat boards that you have. And then we're going to go ahead and pre-drill with a countersink bit. I'm using number 8 screws, so I'm going to use a number 8 countersink bit and drill at each of these spots. Marking all the drill locations is probably going to take more time than anything else. And then now I'm going to use my drill. I've got a number 8 countersink bit. And when I'm drilling, I want to countersink in a bit because I need this to be flush so that when a hanger sits on it, it sits flush. I've got a sacrificial board underneath, so if the tip comes through, I'm not going to ruin my workbench. So now you just go ahead and drill all the holes where they indicated. Now, to attach the cleat to the 1/2-inch plywood, I'm going to use a method that I learned from Chris from A Glimpse Inside, and he has some great videos on French cleats, by the way, so go check those out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up here with my line, and then I'm going to shoot a brad nail in between the screws. Now, I might not do all of them, but what that does is it holds it in place to the plywood, so then I can come back and put in 1 1/4-inch screws into the holes that I've pre-drilled. So using the brad nailer keeps it straight and makes it easy to put the screws in afterwards. Now, you don't need a really long brad nail. I'm using, I think, 1 or 1 1/4-inch, kind of depends on what I have in my brad nail gun. So I'm going to hold that up with the brad nailer. I'm going to nail it into place. Okay, so what you can do is you can either brad nail it all in and then screw each set in, or you can brad nail all of them and then screw all of them, whichever works best for you. I'm going to brad nail all of them in, and then I'm going to come back and screw them all in. So I've got all of them brad nailed in. Now, the screw that I'm using again is a 1 1/4-inch number 8 screw, and what I'm using is I'm not using a impact driver. I'm not even using a drill. I'm using a power screwdriver because I don't want to drive this through the cleat. That's not the point. It's just to secure it to the back, to the 1 1/2-inch plywood. So that's what we're going to do here, and I'll just go ahead and screw usually from the center and then work my way out. Another option to make it go faster is to just put each of the screws into the hole, sort of preset them in there because it's countersunk anyways, and then you can just simply use your screwdriver or drill and drill them quicker. So there we go. That's how you put a French cleat wall up with a 1/2-inch piece of plywood as a backer, how to set your wall cleats in the correct spots, how to get them in there securely. Now all you have to do is to put holders on with whatever you want. This is in my garage, so in some of the other videos I have built various holders for various tools in the garage, whether they're long hand tools, whether they are small garden tools, leaf blower, hose, number of different things. So here's the new French cleat wall. All organized, all the tools are on, and easy to move them back and forth because pretty soon the snow is going to be coming down here and we're going to have to move the snow shovels to the front and the rakes can move to the back. If you're thinking about organizing your garage, consider using French cleats. They're a very flexible system, and using this method, it's easy to get them up in just a couple of hours and get your garage organized. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you get notified when I publish new videos. If the information in this video was helpful to you, here are some other videos I think you'll also find helpful. Thanks for watching.